My stepmother didn't even look up from the guest list when she delivered the blow. "Mason, darling, we need you to stay in the server room tonight to monitor the AC. The main table is for Tyler's VIP investors, and honestly, you just don't fit the aesthetic. You understand, right?" That was the moment the loyal architect inside me finally died. I looked around the multi-million-dollar smart home I had designed, coded, and paid for. They wanted me to be the invisible ghost in the machine? Fine. Of course, I smiled. But as I walked away, I wasn't going to the control room to keep the lights on. I was going there to turn them off. You don't just wake up one day and decide to delete your family from your life. It's not a sudden explosion. It's more like a slow leak, a tiny drip of disrespect that you ignore, day after day, until you're drowning in it. For years, I told myself that my role in this family was just different. I wasn't the star. I was the stagehand. I was the guy who made sure the lights worked, the sound was crisp, and the foundation didn't crumble, while Tyler, my stepbrother, stood in the spotlight and soaked up the applause. I still remember the first time I walked into this house. It wasn't the Vance Manor back then. It was a rotting Victorian shell that smelled like damp wood and lost dreams. My stepmom looked at it and saw a disaster. I looked at it and saw potential. I spent every weekend for 3 years crawling through crawl spaces, rewiring electrical panels that hadn't been touched since the 1950 seconds, and writing code for a smart home system that most people only see in movies. I poured my savings, my sweat, and my sanity into these walls. And when it was finally done, when the voice-activated lights hummed to life and the climate control system purred like a kitten, my parents threw a small dinner party. I remember waiting for a thank you, or maybe just a good job, Mason. Instead, my dad raised a glass and toasted to Tyler. "To our boy," he said, beaming, "who's been working so hard on his personal brand. This house is finally a backdrop worthy of you, son." I felt a sting in my chest. Sharp and cold, but I pushed it down. That's what scapegoats do, right? We swallow the poison and smile so everyone else can have a good time. Psychologists call it the Scapegoat Syndrome, where one person in the family is designated to carry the burden, the blame, and the invisible labor, just so the golden child can shine without ever lifting a finger. I was the solid ground they walked on, and because I never cracked, they forgot I was even there. They forgot that ground can shift. And when it does, everything built on top of it comes crashing down. But back then, standing in the shadow of my own creation, I still thought if I just built enough, fixed enough, gave enough, maybe one day, they'd see me. I was wrong. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just nodded, swallowed the bitter taste of humiliation, and went downstairs to the server room. It was essentially a glorified closet in the basement, humming with the sound of the equipment I had installed. I sat there on a folding chair, staring at the blue lights flickering on the rack, listening to the muffled sounds of preparation upstairs. I could hear Tyler's voice echoing through the floorboards. He was in the main hall, probably directing the catering staff or rehearsing his speech. "Make sure the spotlight hits right here when I walk in," he said, his voice loud and confident. Then, I heard my mom. "Oh, Tyler, honey, don't worry. This night is going to be perfect. Everyone is going to see just how talented you are." Talented. The word made me flinch. Tyler's talent was taking credit. My talent was making sure the credit had a platform to stand on. But then, the conversation shifted, and my blood ran cold. "Where's Mason?" Tyler asked, sounding bored. "I need someone to fix the Wi-Fi signal in the guest suite. It's lagging." "Oh, don't worry about him," my dad replied, his voice closer now, maybe in the kitchen directly above me. "He's down in the hole, where he belongs. As long as he keeps the AC running, he's useful." There was a pause, and then Tyler laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "Good. Because once this party is over and the investors sign on for the homestay franchise, we won't really need a live-in engineer anymore, will we? I mean, we can probably hire a service for cheaper than feeding him." "We'll cross that bridge when we get there," my mom said, her tone practical, devoid of any warmth. "Let him finish the landscape lighting first. It adds value to the property appraisal. Then, well, he's an adult. It's time he moved on." I sat frozen in the dark. The blue lights on the server rack blurred as the realization hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just excluding me from a party. They were planning my obsolescence. I wasn't a son. I wasn't a brother. I was a tool. A wrench they used to tighten the bolts of their life until they were secure enough to toss me back in the toolbox or the trash. Homestay franchise, I whispered to myself. They were going to use my smart home system, my designs, my hard work to launch a business for Tyler, and then kick me to the curb once the ink was dry. For years, I had convinced myself that if I just made myself indispensable, they would have to love me. If I was the one fixing the leaks, paying the bills, upgrading their lifestyle, I would earn my place at the table. But sitting there in the basement, listening to them plot my exit strategy while I kept their air conditioning running, I finally understood. You can't earn love from people who only see utility. Something snapped. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like a circuit breaker tripping in the dark. I looked at the server rack, the brain of the house, the thing that controlled every light, every lock, every camera, every thermostat. You want me to move on? I thought, a cold calm settling over me. Fine, but I'm taking my value with me. I stood up. I wasn't going to wait for them to discard me. I was going to press the reset button. And I was going to do it now. The heavy oak door slammed shut, and the lock clicked. They were gone. My stepmom was off to get her hair done. Tyler was probably already posting a pre-gala glow-up selfie from the limo, and my dad had tossed me the keys to the service entrance like I was the hired help. "Sweep the driveway before the caterers get here," he'd shouted. For the first time in years, the house was completely silent. Usually, that silence felt heavy, a reminder of how alone I was in a house full of people. But today it felt like a blank canvas. I checked my watch. 2:15 p.m. The guests were arriving at 6. I had less than 4 hours to undo 3 years of work. I didn't run around smashing vases or ripping curtains. That's amateur. That's emotional. I'm an engineer. We don't destroy, we deconstruct. I walked to the garage, grabbed my professional flight cases, the heavy-duty ones with the custom foam inserts, and I went to work. I started in the basement, back in that server room. It was almost ritualistic. I powered down the main rack. The hum of the cooling fans, a sound that had been the heartbeat of this house, slowly whined to a halt. One by one, I pulled the drive bays. These weren't just hard drives. They were the brain of the estate. The custom lighting algorithms, the security protocols, the climate control schedules I had spent sleepless nights coding, all gone in a satisfying click. Then I moved upstairs. I worked methodically, room by room. The central touch panels in the hallways? Unscrewed, disconnected, and packed in anti-static bags. The high-end smart thermostats that kept the temperature at a perfect 72 degrees? Removed. I left the wires dangling there, raw and exposed, like nerves. I moved through the house like a ghost. The Sonos amps hidden in the ceilings, the Lutron lighting bridges, the biometric scanners on the wine cellar door. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming. Every single item I touched had my name on the invoice. Every single microchip was paid for from my business account because my dad had said, "Put it on your card, Mason. We'll reimburse you when the refinance comes through." They never did. But the physical hardware was just the surface. The sofa and the TV were just things. The real devastation, the part that was going to hurt them the most, was invisible. This was the scorched earth part of the plan. I sat down on the floor of the now dim living room, opened my laptop, and logged into the registrar. You see, Tyler didn't just want a party, he wanted a brand launch. He had printed https://www.google.com/search q thevancemanor.com on every single gold leaf invitation. He had QR codes on the napkins. I owned the domain. Click. Deleted. The custom email addresses they were using to collect RSVPs from the VIP list? Suspended. I opened the smart home admin portal. A house like this relies on the cloud to function. It needs to talk to the servers to know when to unlock the front gate, when to turn on the landscape heating, when to play the playlist. I revoked the API keys. I unlinked the accounts. I changed the admin passwords to a 64-character string of gibberish that even I wouldn't remember. Then, for the final touch, I went to Google Maps. I found the location pin for the Vance Manor, which Tyler had spent months trying to get verified. I reported it as permanently closed. It took me exactly 2 hours and 45 minutes. When I snapped the last flight case shut, the sun was starting to dip lower in the sky. Shadows were stretching across the floor, long and dark. The house felt different now. It wasn't humming. It wasn't breathing. The ambient lighting didn't warm up to match the sunset. The blinds didn't lower automatically. The heating system was dead silent, and the chill of the evening was already starting to creep in through the glass. The house was dead. Without me, it was just a cold, dark pile of expensive bricks and drywall. I stood in the center of the grand foyer, holding the last box in my arms. I looked at the spot where the grand chandelier usually sparkled now, just a dark shape hanging in the gloom because the smart dimmer was sitting in my truck. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. I walked out the service door, loaded the truck, and drove it around the block, parking it safely out of sight. Then, I walked back to the house, went down to the server room, sat in my folding chair, and waited in the dark. The silence was absolute now. And it was perfect. By 5:45 p.m., the sun had set completely, plunging the Vance Manor into an elegant but eerie darkness. The only light came from the headlights of the first few luxury cars rolling up the driveway. I watched from the window of the little coffee shop across the street, nursing a black coffee that was finally starting to cool down. It started slowly. The automatic gates, which were programmed to swing open majestically at 5:50 p.m., remained stubbornly shut. A queue of Bentleys and Mercedes began to form, their engines idling, red taillights painting streaks in the dark. I saw a valet driver get out, confused, waving his arms at the intercom. He pressed the button. Nothing. No buzz. No voice. Just dead air. Then, the family arrived. Tyler's rented limo pulled up to the service entrance, the only gate that had a manual override, which I knew they'd eventually figure out. They stumbled out, looking impeccable in tuxedos and gowns, but their faces were masks of confusion. I saw my dad fumbling with his phone, trying to open the front door app. He tapped the screen furiously, then shook the phone like it was broken. They had to use the physical key. I hadn't used a physical key on that door in 3 years. It took my dad 5 minutes just to find it on his keychain. When they finally pushed the heavy doors open, they weren't greeted by the warm, golden glow of the foyer or the soft jazz playlist I had curated. They walked into a tomb. It was freezing inside. Without the heating system, the large, open-concept space had dropped to the outside temperature. I saw my stepmom wrap her fur stole tighter around herself, shivering not just from cold, but from panic. Tyler was the first to lose it. I saw the glow of his phone screen as he tried to go live on Instagram to explain the technical difficulties. He held the phone up, put on his best influencer smile, and froze. He moved around. He held the phone up to the sky. No Wi-Fi, no signal boosters. The house was a dead zone. Outside, the guests were getting restless. Some were honking, others were checking their phones. And that's when the coup de grace hit. I refreshed the Google Maps page on my laptop. The little red pin for the Vance Manor had updated. Permanently closed. And right underneath, a user review I hadn't written, but someone, maybe a confused guest, had just posted. Places shut down. Gates locked. Dark as a cave. Scam? I watched as cars began to turn around. The confused whispers of the elite, the very people Tyler wanted to impress, were now documented on the internet forever. The grand opening had become a grand closing before a single canapé was served. Inside the dark house, I could see the flashlights of their phones bobbing around like frantic fireflies. They weren't living the high life anymore. They were camping in a very expensive, very cold box, and they had absolutely no idea how to turn it back on. It didn't take long for them to find me. I wasn't hiding. I was sitting right there in the window seat of the Daily Grind, the coffee shop directly across from the manor's front gates. I watched as my dad stormed across the street, dodging the departing luxury cars, his face a shade of purple I'd never seen before. Tyler and my stepmom trailed behind him, stumbling in their expensive shoes, looking less like royalty and more like refugees from a failed glamping trip. My dad slammed his hands onto my table, rattling my coffee cup. The few other patrons in the shop looked up, startled. "You!" he spat, breathless and shaking. "You ungrateful, spiteful little... Fix it! Fix it right now! Do you have any idea how much money we are losing every second those lights are off?" Tyler pushed past him, shoving his phone in my face. The screen was black. "My followers think I've been raided by the FBI, Mason. Permanently closed? Are you insane? Do you know what this does to my algorithm engagement? Turn the servers back on. Now." My stepmom played the only card she knew. The victim. She clutched her pearls literally and looked at me with teary, betrayed eyes. "Mason, honey, how could you? After everything we've done for you, we took you in. We gave you a home. And you ruin your brother's big night because of what? Jealousy? Because you couldn't sit at the head table?" I looked at them, really looked at them. For the first time in my life, I didn't see authority figures. I didn't see people whose approval I was desperate to earn. I saw 3 drowning people angry at the life raft for finally deflating. I didn't shout back. I didn't defend myself. I slowly reached into my bag and pulled out my iPad Pro. I set it on the table and unlocked it. "Sit down," I said. My voice was quiet, but it had a weight to it that they weren't used to. They hesitated, but the look in my eye told them I wasn't playing. I tapped the screen, opening a folder labeled Assets. "You keep using words like steal and ruin," I said, sliding the iPad toward my dad. "Let's look at the paperwork, shall we?" I swiped to the first image. This is the invoice for the Lutron lighting system. $45,000. Paid by Mason Vance. Not reimbursed. Swipe. The invoice for the Crestron server rack and the custom HVAC control units. $80,000. Paid by Mason Vance. Not reimbursed. Swipe. The landscaping architectural plans. The security biometric upgrades. The Sonos sound system. All paid for. By me. My dad stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "So what?" he stammered. "You bought them for the house. That makes them fixtures. You can't just rip them out." Actually, I swiped to a legal document. I installed them as temporary staging equipment under my consulting firm's name. "You never signed the purchase agreement I sent you 3 years ago. You remember? You said you were too busy to read the fine print." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Okay, fine. You want money? We'll pay you. Just give me the passwords back. I need to delete that Google Maps listing." I looked at Tyler and smiled a cold, thin smile. "That brings me to my favorite part." I swiped one last time. A digital certificate appeared on the screen. It was an official trademark registration from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. "You see, Tyler, you spent so much time picking out fonts for your brand that you forgot to actually legally own it. The Vance Manor, the name, the logo, the digital footprint. I registered it 6 months ago when you started talking about the homestay business." The color drained from Tyler's face. You trademarked my house? "My brand," I corrected. "And since I own the brand, I have the right to decide when a location is closed. And I decided that the brand was being diluted by poor management." I stood up, picking up my iPad. "Mason, please," my stepmom whispered, the realization finally sinking in that this wasn't a tantrum they could wait out. "The house is dark. It's freezing. We can't bring guests back there." "That house isn't dark because I broke it," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "It's dark because that is the reality of what you own. You own the shell. You own the drywall and the studs. But the warmth, the light, the intelligence, that was me. That was always me." I slung my bag over my shoulder. Many people would look at that blackout across the street and call me petty. They'd call it revenge. But standing here, looking at you, I realized something. Revenge is active. Revenge is throwing a brick through a window. I didn't throw a single brick. I just removed the support beams I'd been holding up for 10 years. I didn't destroy your lifestyle. I just let gravity take over. The darkness isn't a punishment I inflicted. It is simply the natural state of your lives without my intervention. It's not revenge. It's just subtraction. I walked past them toward the door. "Enjoy the party," I said. I hear candlelight is very romantic. If you can find any candles. The fallout was fast, brutal, and entirely digital. In the world of influencers, silence is death, but exposure is a funeral. By the next morning, the grand opening of the Vance Manor was trending, but not for the reasons Tyler had hoped. The hashtag number Vance Manor scam started circulating on TikTok. Guests who had been turned away at the gate posted videos of the dark house, captioned with things like, "Invited to a mansion, arrived at a haunted house, and so much for the luxury lifestyle." Tyler tried to do damage control. He posted a tearful video blaming rogue contractors and unforeseen technical glitches. But the internet is a cruel detective. Someone dug up the public trademark filing I had shown my dad. They found out the house wasn't even under Tyler's name. The comment section turned into a bloodbath. He wasn't just embarrassed, he was exposed as a fraud. The sponsors for his homestay project pulled out within 48 hours. His personal brand, built on the foundation of a lifestyle he didn't own and technology he didn't understand, collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. But while Tyler was fighting a war online, my parents were fighting a much more primitive battle inside the house. I heard about it from a neighbor I bumped into at the hardware store. Apparently, they were living in a shell. Without the smart heating algorithms optimizing the airflow, the old Victorian draftiness returned with a vengeance. They couldn't figure out how to manually bleed the radiators because I had always done it via the app. They couldn't get the motorized blinds to raise, so they were living in perpetual gloom. My dad even had to call a locksmith because he locked himself out of the garage and didn't know where the physical backup keys were kept. It sounds petty to laugh at grown adults struggling with basic house maintenance, but this was deeper than just incompetence. It was pathological. There's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It usually describes what happens to animals when they are conditioned to believe they have no control over their environment. So they stop trying to escape pain even when the cage door is open. But I realized it applies to people like my family, too. By constantly shielding them from the reality of homeownership, by fixing every glitch before they even noticed it, by automating their comfort, I hadn't just been helpful. I had inadvertently disabled them. They had learned that they didn't need to understand how their world worked because Mason would handle it. They had outsourced their survival instincts to me. So, when I left, they didn't just lose a son or a handyman. They lost their ability to function. They were helpless not because the problems were unsolvable, but because they had forgotten how to solve problems. They were trapped in a luxury cage of their own making, shivering in the dark because they never learned how to light a match. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Tyler. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity, or maybe a lingering habit of availability, made me pick up. "Mason?" His voice was small. Gone was the bravado, the showman tone. He sounded like a kid who had broken a vase. "Mason, are you coming by today?" "Why would I come by, Tyler?" I asked, leaning back in my office chair. We can't get the hot water to work," he stammered. "Mom is freezing. Dad is trying to fix the boiler, but he's making it worse. Look, we're sorry, okay? We messed up. The party was a disaster. I lost the investors. Now, please, just come back and turn the system on. We can't live like this." It was the apology I thought I wanted. He said the words. "We're sorry." But listening to him, I felt nothing. No triumph, no relief. Because I realized he wasn't apologizing for hurting me. He wasn't sorry for erasing me from the guest list or treating me like a servant. He was sorry that the water was cold. He was panic apologizing. It was the desperate cry of a parasite realizing the host had detached. "I can't fix it, Tyler," I said calmly. "What do you mean you can't? You built it." "I mean I won't," I corrected. I sent Dad a list of reputable contractors in the area. They charge standard rates. You should call them. "Mason, we're family," he shouted, the desperation turning into anger. "No, Tyler," I said. "We were co-workers, and I just quit." I hung up the phone. I knew they would figure it out eventually. They had money. They could pay someone to come in and install a new, dumber system that they could understand. But they would never get back what I gave them for free. The intuition, the care, the magic of a house that seemed to know what you needed before you asked. That was gone forever. And for the first time, I realized that wasn't my loss. It was theirs. A week later, I met my dad at a neutral location, a bustling diner downtown. He looked older, tired. His crisp suit was a little wrinkled, and the arrogance that used to radiate off him had been replaced by a frantic energy. He slid a check across the table. It was for the hardware I had removed. "It's all there," he said, tapping the paper. "Every cent. We refinanced the house again. Just take it and come back. Reinstall the system. Tyler. Tyler is falling apart. He needs you to manage the online backlash." I looked at the check. It was a lot of money, enough to start my own firm properly. But then I looked at my dad, and I saw the trap. He wasn't paying me for the equipment. He was trying to buy back his comfort. He was trying to purchase a reset button for his life so he could go back to ignoring me. I picked up the check and folded it neatly into my pocket. "Thank you," I said. "I'll deposit this today, but I won't be coming back." His face dropped. "What? But I paid you. That was the deal." "No," I said. "You paid for the goods you used for 3 years. That settles the debt. It doesn't renew the contract." I leaned forward. "You still don't get it, do you? You think this is about money. You think if you throw enough cash at the problem, the help will go back to work. But I'm not the help anymore. I'm the competition." He blinked, confused. "I launched my own smart home consultancy yesterday," I continued. "And guess who my first client is? The neighbors down the street. The ones who saw your blackout and realized they needed a system that actually works. And unlike you, they signed the contract. They respect the architect." I stood up to leave, but then I paused. There was one last thing I needed to say, a warning, not out of malice, but out of a strange, residual pity. "Dad," I said softly, "you need to be careful. You've spent your whole life feeding Tyler's ego, shielding him from every consequence, making sure he never had to lift a finger. You think you were helping him? You were crippling him." He frowned. "Don't talk about your brother like that." "He's not my brother," I said. "He's a parasite. And parasites need a host. For 10 years, that host was me. I paid the bills. I fixed the problems. I made him look good. But I'm gone now. I've detached. And a parasite that loses its host doesn't just die. It finds a new one." My dad stared at me, a flicker of fear finally breaking through his denial. "He's going to turn on you," I said. "When the money runs out, when the internet fame dries up, when he realizes he can't survive on his own, he's going to start eating away at whatever you have left. Your retirement, your patience, your sanity. I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this because I'm the only one who's ever been honest with you." I walked out of the diner and into the bright afternoon sun. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening behind me. The waiter was probably refilling my dad's coffee, and for the first time in his life, he was realizing that the bill was coming due, and there was no one left at the table to pick it up but him. I'm sitting in my new office right now. It's not a mansion. It's a converted loft above a bakery downtown. The floorboards creak a little. The HVAC system is old, and yes, I'm going to fix it eventually, but for the first time in my life, I'm in a space that doesn't demand anything from me. On the desk in front of me is a set of blueprints for my next project. It's a community center, a place designed to bring people together, not to shut them out. And the best part? My name is in the corner of every single page. Mason Vance, lead architect. Not son, not helper, not fixer, just me. Looking back at the blackout at the Vance Manor, at the chaos and the silence, I realized something fundamental. We are taught from the moment we are born that family is sacred. We are told that blood is thicker than water, that you never turn your back on your kin, but that biological imperative can become a trap. It keeps us locked in cages, convinced that if we just give a little more, sacrifice a little more, we will finally be accepted. But I learned the hard way that for some families, the dynamic isn't about love, it's about economics. There is a terrifying difference between a family that nurtures you and a family that consumes you. A nurturing family is like a garden. You water it, and it grows, giving back shade and fruit. But a consuming family? It's a black hole. It takes your light, your energy, your money, and your self-esteem, and it gives back nothing but gravity, pulling you down until you're crushed. My stepmother, my dad, Tyler. They didn't love me. They loved what I provided. They loved the lifestyle I subsidized. And the moment I stopped providing, the moment I set a boundary, the love evaporated because it was never real to begin with. It was just a transaction disguised as a relationship. Leaving wasn't an act of betrayal. It was an act of survival. I look at these blueprints, and I see more than just walls and windows. I see a metaphor for life. You are the architect of your own existence. You are the one holding the pen. If you spend your whole life laying the foundation for someone else's castle, hoping they'll let you sleep in the gatehouse, you're going to end up cold and homeless the moment they decide you take up too much space. You have to build your own structure. You have to own your own keys. It's scary. God, it is terrifying to walk away from the only people you've ever known, even if they hurt you. It's scary to press that reset button and watch the lights go out. But I promise you, the darkness doesn't last forever. And when the sun comes up the next morning, the light is different, it's real, it's yours. So, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself in the comments below. Are you the architect of your life, or are you just the extra in someone else's show? Are you building a future for yourself, or are you lighting yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm? If you're the one holding the flashlight in the dark while everyone else ignores you, maybe it's time to turn it off, walk away, and find your own sunrise. Because you deserve to be more than just a utility. You deserve to be the main event.